Hello, beautiful souls. Today I'm going to share something that I've not shared much before, and it's some writing about judgment because after my last video about judgment, some people were just looking for some more clarity on that, and I thought this might offer some of that clarity because this whole thing about recognizing the patterns that are so ingrained within us that we don't even recognize them as conditioning. The more we learn about it, the easier it is for us to really start to begin to see that and let go of these past conditioning, because we really are living in new times, and it's time for the true essence of us to bubble up through. And this is a book, again, that I wrote in 2013. So I actually wrote 3 books in 2013. And this one, as you can see, is called You Get What You Believe. And it's a very small book, but I've been told by people who have read it that it changed their lives. One woman came to a workshop just to tell me that it changed her so much that her boss noticed a difference in her, and she bought a copy for her sister, and she started seeing a change in her sister. So I am going to create it as an audio book and put it on my website. That'll be coming soon. So I'm just going to share from this book today. And so I'm going to start with this section. Here is a statement that I want you to consider because it is fundamental to this work. You may be starting to realize this from what I have written so far. Everything in our external world comes from our thoughts and beliefs. Everything. What we see on the outside is a reflection of what we believe on the inside. If we are going to find it, because in this book I talk about find it and free it, so find the limiting beliefs, and then I offer techniques for us to be able to move through them and move into the freedom of no longer holding those thought patterns. If we are going to find the hidden patterns that create our everyday reality, we have to understand this concept. Everything that happens in the world travels through our filters. That is why 5 people can witness an accident and everyone will have a different version of what happened. Again, we see what we believe. If you were in an accident when you were a child, it may trigger memories that take you back to the time of your initial trauma. That memory will impact you and what you just witnessed, and you might give a whole different version of the accident than someone standing beside you. We always respond from our personal experience. And this is true for all the relationships we have in the world. That would include the coworker that you dislike, your child that you love, your motorbike that makes you feel free, and your sore toe that holds you back. All of it comes from thinking, which is based on your beliefs. Remember what I shared about releasing my belief about now not being supported in life, and how the support started showing up the very next day. So I recognized in my late 40s that I had this belief that I'm just not supported in the world. And it was quite a turnaround for me to realize that. And so I cleared that belief, and the very next day I was amazed at how support started showing up. I was doing a presentation the next day, and in my presentation I said I wanted to be doing sound circles at the local children's hospital for the nurses. And the person I'd been connecting with in the front row spoke up and said, I'm a nurse there, I can help you with that. And then that following weekend, I was doing a workshop, and someone who attended my workshop offered to help me with my business online. So when we clear these things and release these patterns, life starts to change. And it's not because anything on the outside changed. It's because our beliefs about who we are in the world and how the world responds to us from that changes, and therefore the way the world responds to us changes as well. I assure you that was no coincidence. Once we start believing something new can show up in our reality. As long as we believe what we have always believed, our reality will be what it has always been. Nothing will change. Look at your own life and explore this for yourself. The reason that it is important to understand this is that you won't be willing to look at the shadow side of yourself to find the hidden gems if you don't understand how this works. The more we understand something and why we need to be looking at it, the more inclined we are to follow through. It takes courage to look at the parts of yourself that you don't particularly like and accept them as part of who you are. The reason you don't see them is because you don't want to admit that you have those qualities. And yet, whether you accept it or not, those qualities and beliefs are impacting your life. I think it is better to have a good look inside and release what you can than continue to run from your shadows and never find the joy you so deeply yearn for. As long as you are running, the shadows will chase you. Once you have the courage to stop, turn around and face them, they begin to disappear. This may not happen all in one go, but the more you are willing to look inside, the clearer you become. I had an example of this when I was still very much resisting a lot of my emotional responses in the world and just not recognizing them and just kind of rising up above and saying, oh, that's okay, I'll just do this, or you can be like that and I'll be the good person, and just let that happen. And once I realized that that was an old pattern of just dismissing what I was really feeling, I had to find the courage to really stay with my feelings and the feeling that was underneath. And it was terrifying in the beginning. But once I did it that first time, it just became easier after that. The hardest part was the fear of doing it before I even got into it. And once I moved through that, it actually got much easier to be real with myself. Every time you find and face something that is chasing you, your life feels lighter and easier. You're not running quite so fast or so hard. And then you start to notice that good things are happening and there is more peace. Eventually you get to the point where you celebrate the hardships that come into your experience because you know it's another great opportunity to release one more hidden thought system that no longer serves your highest potential. I was doing hypnotherapy training one time, and the teacher said there are two ways of being in the world. We run from what we are afraid of, or we move toward what we want. And that statement hit me like a rock because I realized I had spent my whole life running from what I didn't want. And there's a huge difference between the two. And this whole work of looking at the shadow self and discovering the hidden beliefs within us really helps us stop running and start moving toward our joy. One of the easiest ways to find our shadows or hidden beliefs is to look at our judgment of others. Judgment shows up in our lives in two ways: what we like and what we don't like about others. So often people don't see that what we like as a judgment, but it's still a thought. And a judgment is a thought in a sense. So this is getting back to my previous video that I'll link at the end here in case you didn't see it. Let's start with an example based on what we like. Every time you give someone a compliment, like, I love your sweater, what you are really saying is, I would like to have that sweater because I think it would look good on me. What you are seeing in the other person that you are complimenting them on is what you would like for yourself or what you like about yourself. Let's take this a step deeper. When you compliment someone for being so organized, you see in them the part of yourself that appreciates organization. Because you admire that trait, you compliment the person on it. Another example is when we say someone has good taste. What we are really saying is that they like what we like. If we think about someone who we think has bad taste, it means that we don't like what they like. We generalize it by saying they have bad taste, but according to whose standards? Ours. Undoubtedly, they think they have good taste. Think about someone you complimented lately so you can find the truth in this for yourself. The more you understand this, the better it will work for you. Now, let's look at the flip side of this. When we see something in another person that we don't like, we judge them. For example, maybe you think your coworker is lazy and doesn't do her share of the work. She always seems to be sitting around, and if you ask her to do something, she has a reason why she can't do it. You get frustrated with this and eventually start daydreaming about her quitting so that someone more competent could take her place. Here's where the truth comes in. Just like giving a compliment is seeing something in the other person that we like about ourselves, having a judgment of someone else is really judging that characteristic in ourselves that we don't like. So our shadow self. This is a great way for us to find where our shadows are. This time we have to ask the same kind of questions, only it is looking at the shadow side, the traits we don't want to admit that we have. Have you ever heard the saying, everyone is a mirror for us? I like to say, mirror, mirror at my side, show me things I like to hide. Everyone in our life experience is showing us something about ourselves. What a great opportunity to see who we truly are, if we are willing to look. So in the case of the lazy coworker, the question you need to ask is, where am I lazy? Where do I resist doing my work? Now hold on, you might say. The reason I dislike that person being lazy is because I am ambitious. There is nothing lazy about me. And my response would be, let's do a little exploring. If you are having trouble identifying in yourself what you judge about others, you can ask your friends for help. Ask them outright, do you ever see parts of me that are lazy, or whatever the attribute is that you are noticing, that you are judging? It is much easier to see someone else's stuff than it is for us to see our own. If not, you could have so much judgment around. So if your friends don't see you as lazy, you could have so much judgment around the energies of laziness that you won't allow yourself to be what you would call lazy. You are so ambitious that you won't even let yourself relax because you have such a judgment around laziness that you won't let yourself be what you would consider to be lazy. So sometimes it may not be that you're lazy, it's that you have such a judgment about it that you be anything but lazy, busy all the time, so that nobody could ever call you lazy. So it can be a little bit tricky to see how this works. It's a good idea to start with easy scenarios. Find some judgments that you see yourself saying all the time. It might be something like, those people are so stupid, and that you notice yourself saying that often. The reason that someone being stupid bothers you is that somewhere you have received the message that you are stupid. For someone who does not believe they are stupid, there's no reaction to someone else being what we could call stupid. They can just ignore it and walk away, or they wouldn't have the thought in the first place. They wouldn't even notice whether it was stupid or not. There would just be no judgment, good or bad, one way or the other, around it at all. However, when we have shadow beliefs that we are also stupid, then it has more of a trigger for us. The reason the trigger is there is that we have a buried belief about it. So this is another way for people to have a deeper awareness of how that idea of having judgments, good or bad, can be a reflection of patterns within us. And what I was saying was really what we really want to come to is where we're just in the world without those good or bad, right or wrong. We are just witnessing what is and being present with what is. And sometimes that may mean that we're wondering if we should respond at all to certain situations, or if we just stand back and we're always observers. And it doesn't mean that. We need to respond to the moment and what the moment brings. But we can explore, what is that response coming from? Is that response coming from an immediate need to protect myself, for example? You start to step out on the sidewalk and then you realize a car is about to turn the corner that didn't notice you, and so you immediately step back. Of course, you know, those are instantaneous responses that come in our lives based on what's happening. Or if we're in a conversation with someone, we're going to respond in that conversation. It's more around when we see something that is a particular judgment. And it's an exploration. It's not to say that we never have qualifications about what's happening in the world, or we let go of all discernment because we see discernment as a judgment. There's a difference between discernment and judgment. Discernment comes from witnessing what's before you and then making a decision whether what you are seeing is the best for you. Someone explained this to me once by saying, if you're walking by a bar and suddenly someone comes flying out the door that just got pushed out the door and you realize everybody's, you know, drunk out of their minds in there, are you going to say, oh, that's the place for me to go and sit and have a quiet glass of wine? No. So we are witnessing what's happening in discernment for whether it's the best for ourselves. But a judgment is when we witness it and we say, look at those people. They are blasted out of their minds. Who are they? Like, how could they live their lives like that? So there's a difference. I can see that and witness it and decide, well, that's definitely not a place where I want to be, but that judgment isn't underneath it. And that comes from a place of really exploring where our judgments that have an emotional connection come from. Because it's when there's that emotional connection, when it creates a conversation that has a charge to it, that's when it's more of a judgment. And that's when there's something within us that is responding that's not from that place of stillness. It's from a place of past events that connect us to what we're seeing in front of us instead of an empty slate being there in the present moment. So there's a big difference between the two. And please, if this is something that interests you and you would like to know more about, please comment and ask for clarity, because I'd be happy to expand on this a bit more. I feel like this is a big piece for us coming back to our own sovereignty, coming back to know who we are and responding to life from the truth of who we are within, instead of the social norms, the cultural norms, the family norms that have programmed us to respond a certain way in certain situations that really may not be the truth of who we want to be at all. So this is a big piece in us claiming back the truth of who we are, responding from the clarity of our own pure essence, which I feel is very important in the world at this time, with all that's happening and all the confusion and all the different messages. The more clear we are in our emotional responses to the world, then the more clear we are in our responses to what's going on and what we're choosing for ourselves and what our own truth is, because I feel it's really important for us at this time to know what our own truth is and to be able to find that. So I'm going to finish up with some songs of light, which is my toning, and light language to just anchor in this clarity of knowing ourselves and standing strong in our place of autonomy with a true interpretation from our place of stillness, what we are connecting with in the world and what we are witness to. Okay. So just bring in the ancient beings of light who speak through me in this way. I invite you to state your own intention for what you would like to receive from this. Ishkani no Ishkalawa ishkanai tiktashkani yashkana maknawa ishkanayo tiktashkani yashkana atwaitna. Machiwa ke I ashkani yashkana maktaka atwa I ishkanai tiktaka atwatna. Machikawa ishkanayo tiktaka alawa ishkana maktaka I yashkana maktaka a ishkana maktaki I itwa ishkana atwatna. So right now we're just clearing patterning of being lost in the emotional state and being tossed about by life. Like just, I'm seeing people who are still in a very deep state of turmoil and hardship and suffering from emotional reactions to the world and their past and what they're seeing. And so holding space for people in that position and feeling this clearing through my body now. Hishkana u ishkana mi yashkana wa ashkana atmatni. Machika atwa ishkanayo tiktika atwa iashkana atmatna. Machikwa atwa ishkanayo tiktika atwa ishkana maktaka ialawa ishkanayo ta. Maktaitawa ishkanai makishkana atwa ishkanayo tikalashkani ashkana atna ishkana atna nachkana atma. Machakwa ishkanayo tiktaka alawa ishkana ishkana maktaki ishkana ashkani yakna ashkana. So just seeing all those people now coming to understand, feeling the mirror turning around and recognizing that there's something within themselves to look at, to see, an awareness that the only way through it is really going into it and looking back within themselves and finding where it comes from. Hishkana miyashkana ashwa iyashkana makti hiyashkaniya. Hiyakshi yashkana atma ishkana tiktaka ashkani 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 makti ishkana ashkani ishkana. I'm feeling a lot in this one. A lot of clearing is happening in this one. So if you know people who are in that emotional state, who may be open to hearing this, there's a lot of clearing happening with it. So it's helping a lot of people who are in that very reactive state, because really it's a lot of struggle to be in that state. So now we're going to anchor in the new state of inner stillness. Ushkana a ishkana tikta hashkani ashkana matnawa ishkana. Makchika ashkawa iashkana ikta tiki ishkana maktaka iala. Machikwa a ishkana yattawa ishkana maktaka Uachki atwa ishkanayo tikta ashkani ashkana maktaka eawa. Ilakshniya imashkaniya. Makchika hayaktaki iawa ishkana maktaki ishkanai. Oktiktawa ishkana maktawa ishkana atwa ishkanai toti kana mikachawa kikishkana atmatna. Makche tako ikashwi ashkani ishkana ashkani. So what I got was that for the people that I'm connecting with in this light language activation, to receive the fullness of their internal stillness, it would still be a bit overwhelming. And so what they did was they anchored those light codes around the auric field of the person so that they can be resting in the auric field. And you could say, soften the field. And when the person is ready to receive them, they'll be there and the person will allow it to come in. So whether this feels true for you or not, what I got at the end was, if you simply play this light language and allow it to permeate in your part of the world, that it actually is going to help people receive the frequency of it, because we know that sound is frequency and frequency is energy and everything is energy. So just like radio waves can be in a room and you may not even hear word for word, but your subconscious knows, and the frequency of you is being impacted by that. So it's the same with the light language. The frequency of it being expressed in the world will help to support what we've just been talking about.